was able to go forward with accurate data, processed more than 170 refunds fairly quickly, returning about $9,500 to Lincoln citizens and recovering about $4,800 in revenue for the city. By December, he had reduced the balance in the unearned revenue account from $15,000 to about $500, closed about 1,900 inactive or incorrect accounts, added about 402 accounts by reviewing police calls to determine if there were additional individuals to whom the fee should be applied. Since the city took over the billing and collections, it's collected about $45,000 more than the billing company did in the same period of time. Melinda said Joel did his database review in addition to his regular duties, and while filling in for an open position twice, training new employees, and covering also absent employees. She wrote that the city's success with the alarm registration program is due to many employees, but she said that Joel's detailed work to clean up the database had allowed the city to be more successful and responsive to the public and had improved the perception of the alarm registration program. So please join me in congratulating a second time Joel Whitrock for our 2015 Honorable Mention Award here today. Joel, would you come forward, please? And this is your second chance to say something to him. You want to take that second opportunity?
Yeah, I guess I can. I didn't really prepare anything because I figured it was just an honorable mention or second place, as a lot of people have told me. I think the mayor did kind of explain everything there. And really, I probably just am being recognized because I could actually put some numbers to everything. There's been several people involved with IS, different people with the police department, the fire department, 911, Jeff with the law department. It's been a lot of pieces that maybe I just helped coordinate and get them all together on why this was successful. I guess I'd like to thank some of my family too. Drove 100 miles to come and see me today. A couple of my aunts, my mom's sisters. My mom's here. My daughter's here. I don't know if my wife was able to make it. She has been really busy at her job. And
do you have them stand up so we can recognize them?
Oh, okay.
Especially if they drove 100 miles.
Yay. All right.
Thank you, family.
And you didn't want to say anything?
What's that? Is there a time limit?
5 minutes, yeah.
5 minutes, like an Oscar or a Grammy. I'm getting the light that I need to exit the stage. So thank you to Melinda and Steve who wrote up the nomination for me, and of course the mayor. So thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, did you want to comment on whether he's continued to behave himself?
Yeah, it's been several months since Joel's been here, but I can assure you he hasn't sloughed off at all. He's an extremely reliable and dependable employee, and other employees that are here from the finance department are very pleased to see that he's receiving this honor today.
Okay. Da-da-da-da. Here's the Mayor's Award of Excellence to a team, and it's the team from the Solid Waste Management Division of Public Works and Utilities. Solid Waste Operations Supervisor Kevin Patak and landfill operators Jason Killingsworth and Mark Reynolds. Superintendent of Solid Waste Operations Carla Welding nominated the team earlier. This is a team of veteran employees. They were nominated in the categories of customer relations and productivity for their work to repair and rebuild the walking floor and the pedestal boom at the transfer station last year. For the monthly review, you got to hear all about what a walking floor and a pedestal boom is. I'm sure you remember that, so I'm not going through that part again. The transfer station was built in the late 1980s, and only minor repairs have been made to the walking floor. Since that time, the steel substructure on which the walking floor is mounted was paper thin. Hydraulic cylinders for the pedestal boom were also needed to be resealed. The work was needed to improve reliability and to allow for quicker, safer repairs in the future. In planning for the work, Kevin suggested that staff could repair and rebuild the walking floor at a lesser cost than a contractor. So he designed a plan to handle the waste accepted during the time the transfer station itself would be out of service. That plan had to account for weather and included changes for customers and staff. Many solid waste operations employees worked with customers to explain the changes and get through the transition. Mark took the lead role in the project's technical aspects, revising the steel substructure bracing and taking measurements for all custom-made steel pieces. He directed Jason during the disassembly and assembly of the walking floor and steel substructure. Mark and Jason did all the welding. The project was completed with no injury to employees or customers, no issues related to transferring waste to the landfill. Excuse me. The team's efforts resulted in estimated savings of $20,000. Their work also improved the reliability of the entire waste transfer facility and provided safer working conditions in the long term for the staff. Carla wrote, while Kevin, Mark, and Jason's positions included responsibility for some minor repairs, excuse me, of all equipment used to handle waste at the transfer station, the extent of the work performed to repair and rebuild the walking floor and the pedestal boom was well beyond expectations. For their outstanding service, it is our pleasure to present the annual Mayor's Award of Excellence in 2015 to Kevin Patak, Jason Kellingworth, and Mark Reynolds. They'll each get a share of a $250 gift certificate, 2 days off with pay. That cup of water made me cough some more. Oh.
Better be careful.
We got to get serious here. They're getting a $250 gift certificate, 2 days off with pay and a plaque. And besides that, I want very much to present them with, each of them with a bronze medallion of the city of Lincoln, which is our equivalent of a key to the city, to thank each and every one of you for the wonderful work that you've done for the city. So come on up here and get your plaques and your medallions. Jason? And Mark.
All right. Thank you.
All right, you guys all look well-spoken. Who's going to speak?
Just keep it short and sweet. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Carla Welding for nominating us. Thank everybody with Solid Waste Operations. We're a pretty tight group that, you know, we see a little bit of everything every day. So, and thanks to the council here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You all good to go?
Any family they might want to introduce?
Say a word or two about the
Well,
awards.
yes, I think councilman knows, is there family here that support you, or are you guys just all single?
My wife Dawn is here with me.
Yay.
You know, it's my pleasure here. You know, I didn't get to be involved in their original award, but I'll certainly take the credit for this wonderful team. But I know this is an example and an opportunity that Donna and Carla shared with me, that when you explain the parameters of what needs to be done and what they need to work in, that these fine citizens of Lincoln use their time and talents to better this place and come up with a great solution that worked out in balancing all the needs for safety and keeping customer service going and to save costs. So this is just a good example of where three guys were able to put their heads together and come up with a great solution here, and we thank them for that. Well deserved.
Thank you.
Chairman, to end this, may I invite everybody here to a reception on the second floor in honor of the winners today.
Excellent.
We'll begin forthwith and continue on.
Hopefully that'll clear out the room.
Yeah, I'm going.
Thank you very much.
And it is.
All right, while they're heading out, I'll start my remarks. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on that item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on an issue not on the agenda for that date nor planned for a future agenda. If you need an agenda, we have some in the back of the room. Parking passes are up front here or in the council office down the hall. Please call the first item.
All right, first, we would request those giving testimony to please clearly state your name and address and to sign in on the sign-in sheet laying on the podium. First item is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 10.
All right, anyone wishing to speak on an item on our consent agenda, please come forward. Is Betsy Bergman here? Would you come forward, please?
Oh,
And you are on the agenda for being a member of our StarTran Advisory Board.
That's right.
Yeah, tell us about yourself.
I work at Region 5 Systems as a project specialist, and so with my experience there, I feel that I can represent some of the consumers of the bus system, as well as I also have experience taking the public transportation system. So.
Any questions from council? Cindy?
Ms. Bergman, thank you very much for being here. I'm real excited. You know, I've been real involved in the StarTran issue these last few months, and I was excited to see your application and that you do seem to have worked in circles where you have communication with a lot of the transit users. So appreciate your willingness to serve on this board.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on an item on our consent agenda, please come forward. All right, next item, please.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Items 1 and 2 were introduced by Lamb.
So moved.
second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Then items 3 and 8 were introduced by Raybold.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion. Call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Next then are our liquor resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward, raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and addresses. Applicants or witnesses are not required to stay for the voting session. I'll call item 11, manager application of Craig Stage for Hopcat at 601 P Street. Just raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Craig Stage. My address is 7060 South 88th Street.
All right, tell us about your application.
It's just I just moved here from Detroit, and we were transferring I'm the general manager of Hopcat, so we wanted to transfer it over to the general manager's name, and just a liquor application. So.
Right. Questions?
How things going down there?
Everything's great. People have been incredible. We couldn't be happier. Actually, we've exceeded our expectations so far, so hopefully it keeps up. Actually, the mayor was in the other night, and I was told after the fact that he was in, and our hosts did not know that it was him, and we were on a really long wait, and he actually ended up leaving, so I felt terrible about that.
Rank does not have its privilege in these matters.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a little bit of background on the on your
Yeah,
restaurant
Hopcat
bar?
originally opened in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 2008. It was kind of the only one for a while, and then it's a craft beer bar. So we specialize in carrying craft beer. Here in Lincoln, we have 132 beers on draft, and we don't carry any macros, so we don't carry like Bud Light, Miller Lite, Busch Light, anything like that. So it's a little bit different than some other places, but everything's been going really well, and we're planning to open, I think, 5 more in the next year as well. So.
I mean, a couple questions. Will you be part of those others, or are you going to be staying here in Lincoln?
I'm going to be here in Lincoln until if they ask me to do a higher position as far as a regional, but I'll be here until I hear differently. And everything's been, like I said, I'm happy here. So coming from Detroit, it's a little bit different feeling, but it's been great. So. And
the other question is, with 132 craft beers, how do you monitor the life expectancy when they get out of date and all? Because that's quite a endeavor.
Yeah, we have a manager. He's our beer manager. It's literally his job is he keeps track of all that stuff. He does all the ordering, all the inventory, and we just there's certain stuff that stays on a little bit longer than we would like, but at the same time, nothing ever really goes bad. And if it does, we just have to take it off and kind of cut our losses. So.
Not free beer night?
No free beer. No free beer night. So unfortunately.
All right, any other questions?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Right. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right, next item, please.
All right, next are items 12 and 13. They're the application of HF Crave for a Class A liquor license at 2801 Pine Lake Road, Suite W, and the related manager application of Byron Hollenbeck. Would you gentlemen raise your right hands? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
Yes.
I do.
Thank you.
Members of the council, my name is Don Bowman. I'm 1045 Lincoln Ball here in Lincoln. I'm an attorney. I represent Myron Hollenbeck and Crave. This is an application for a beer license at their restaurant. And I'll let Mr. Hollenbeck describe this restaurant a little bit for you. It's been in business for quite some time, and it specializes in homegrown beef that Mr. Hollenbeck has a separate entity that raises. So, JR, if you'll take it from there.
I'm Myron Hollenbeck, 27507 Fletcher Avenue in Elmwood, Nebraska. And it's a burger restaurant that does specialize in our meat that we raise, and we're hoping that it's going to go good with the craft beer concept that's also going to be pointed towards local Nebraska breweries.
All right, questions? Cindy.
Hi, Mr. Hollenbeck, welcome today. Okay, so I just had a question about, I had just seen something that said that there was a license revocation as far as a driver's license, and has that been taken care of?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. That's my only question.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak to these items, please come forward. All right. Next item, please.
Next are items 14 and 15, application of Bison Witches Bar and Grill for a Class C liquor license at 1320 P Street, Suite 100, and the related manager application of Brandon Cossack. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
Brandon Cossack, 1320 P Street here in Lincoln. Just purchased Bison Witches. I'm looking to get the new application for that. Willing to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Carl.
Yes, welcome. So as a new owner, what
What kinds of changes are you anticipating?
Don't want to make too many changes, but we are working on cleaning the place up a little bit. It's been there for 15 years, so there hasn't been much renovation or a lot of cleaning in there for that amount of time. So we're getting things cleaner in there and looking at renovating down the line. But as far as menu and things like that, just keeping things the same. I know they haven't had any troubles with their application in 15 years that they've had it, so just keeping it like that.
Okay. This will be, what, the second year for the use of the Tower Square
Yeah, they
space?
just opened it in the fall last year, so
Okay.
they had it open for a short amount of time.
All right, okay. So you intend to utilize that space as well?
Yep, yeah, we're looking forward to that. And definitely, we're paying for it, so we need to make sure we're getting something out of it. So we're looking at ways to make that better for us and be able to use it
Great.
when it's a little bit chilly out too, but
Yeah.
get some heaters in there or something, so.
Good, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right, next item, please.
All right, next are items 16 and 17, application of Valentino's for a Class C liquor license at 2820 Pine Lake Road, Suite 1, and the related manager application of Michael Messinio. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm here for Val's, and on behalf of Mike Messinio, I'm legal counsel for Val's and one of the owners. So I guess I just saw Don Bowman up here, so I guess lawyers are welcome up here.
Could you state your name and address?
Mike Alicio, 2601 South 70th, Lincoln, Nebraska 68506. This is about our new store at South Point that looks like, you know, probably the end of May will open. Have seating for about 150 people, dining seating, and then carry-out delivery will be a large area as well. So it's kind of, if you've been out to the new Val's North, it's a little bigger, but it's on that same principle. And we're crossing fingers. We're all tense and looking at plans all day and running around. Did we do the right thing? You know? But it's great. We're very excited about it. We're happy to be associated with RED, and they've been great partners. And I'll answer any questions that you have.
Questions? All righty. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. Okay, next item, please.
All right, next then are items 18 and 19, application of Rupert Enterprises doing business as T Stop and Shop for a Class D liquor license at 2801 O Street and the related manager application of Terrence Rupert. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, state your name and address, please.
My name is Terrence Rupert, and I live at 1401 West Saltillo Road.
All right. Tell us about your application.
We're just upgrading our application. We have a beer license now. I don't know where my lawyer is.
He's saving you money, I think.
We're just upgrading our application, trying to do a better job of what we've been doing, trying to be able to pay our employees a little more money and keep better in our facilities.
All right. John?
Yeah, I had one question. I'm trying to think through various convenience stores, and do many of them serve, when you get up to the straight liquor versus beer and wine? Or
What's that?
not serve, but sell. You're doing off-sale is what you're asking to go for hard
Yes.
liquors.
Well, we have off sale now.
For beer and wine, I believe.
Right.
And so you want to upgrade to alcohol.
Right. And our customers keep, they keep asking us, well, do you sell this? Do you sell that? We do not.
Are there many other convenience stores that sell the full line of alcohol product?
Every convenience store I know.
We've had more and more applications for
Yeah.
upgrades.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right, next item, please.
All right, next is the manager application of Rob Reef for Hy-Vee Incorporated for the various Hy-Vee stores in town. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you really believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
My name's Rob Reif at 5010 O Street here in Lincoln. Our existing manager has retired, and Hy-Vee's wanting me to be the manager on all of our licenses here in town. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions? Cindy, go ahead.
Do you have an attorney?
Many, but they're not here.
Roy.
I thought I'd just take this opportunity to talk about what Hy-Vee is doing with the Scouting for Food program. We ought to mention that.
Well, this past Saturday, we partnered with the Boy Scouts, which we do every year, and Roy Christensen was at our store and did a press release, and basically we partnered with the food bank and the Boy Scouts. They raised money for the food bank, so it went very well. Teaches the kids a lot of life lessons. They're in there, raising money for the food bank and stuff, so it's a pretty fun day for us.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right. Next item, please.
All right, next then is item 21, application of Shilling Bridge Cork and Tap House for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 160 feet by 160 feet in the parking lot south of 575 Fallbrook Boulevard on June 25th from 1 p.m. to midnight. Before I forget, no oath.
Oh, got it. Perfect. All right, Dallas Schilling. I'm here representing the 575 Fallbrook building. We're just doing the same thing that we did last year. I put a festival on. It's called Rhythm and Brews Festival, and I bring in acts. I'm going to do 4 local acts throughout Lincoln and Omaha, and then I'm going to bring in 1 regional act and just put on bands and have craft beer and some food. So,
all right, questions? Carl.
Yes, thanks. Sounds like a great event.
Yeah.
But it's a residential neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So did things go okay the first year?
Yeah.
Any issues with noise or anything?
Yeah, they went great. Where we're set up, we actually, it's an L-shaped building, and the band is actually on the south side of that building, and then it also faces south. And I asked many residents, and they said some of them could hear it a little bit, but that really just brought them down, and no complaints. So it worked out good.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, out of curiosity, with your presence there in Fallbrook, and of course you've got your winery, southeast Nebraska, how's it going for you on your wine sales?
It's going good. Unfortunately, our vineyard's been hit pretty hard the last couple years through the winters and hail and things like that. So we're actually not even really in any retail locations anymore. We're just selling the both locations just to try to get our wine through what stock we have until we can get some more. Hopefully, praying for a good year this year. So, yeah.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right. Next item, please.
All right, next is item 22, application of Warren's Bottle Shop for a special designated license to cover an outdoor area measuring approximately 36 feet by 45 feet at 3400 A Street on April 21st, May 19th, June 16th, July 21st, August 18th, and September 15th between 3:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. Just state your name and address.
Eric Baum, 3710 LaSalle Street.
All right. Tell us about your application.
Yes, this is in relationship to a charity bike ride that we've sponsored. This will be our 3rd year. So it's the 3rd Thursday of each month. Last year we raised about $17,000 for local charities. We're excited about this year. We've teamed up with Cedars, and portion of the proceeds will go to Cedars to pair bicycles and helmets and bike locks with about 30 kids in need. We've other people that participate in the Tour de Brew is Cycle Works here in town, several restaurants downtown, and we'll have 6 different rides benefiting 6 different charities in town.
Great. Questions? All right. Thank you very much. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of items 11 through 22.
Second.
Second by Roy. Discussion. All right, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Next then are public hearing resolutions. Item 23, accepting the report of new and pending claims against the city and approving disposition of claims set forth for the period of March 16th through the 31st, 2016.
All right, anyone here to speak to a claim this afternoon, please come forward. All right, move on to the next item.
All right, next then is item 24, approving a resolution to prevent tobacco consumption or simulated activities at or within 15 feet of a bus stop, bus shelter, or perimeter line of any transit center or facility.
Jeffrey Patrick, City Attorney. As you might recall, this is an issue that came up when you were approving the city's transit plan. It was the council that came up with the idea of the 15-foot perimeter. It comes before you in the form of a resolution. It leaves the duty of basically the enforcement of this resolution with the bus operators. It's possible that we'll evaluate this in the future and decide that we need to make an ordinance, perhaps get the LPD involved. But I talked with Mike Davis, and he first thought it was appropriate to see how this works, and if it works well, then we won't need to make any changes. The language for the definition of the tobacco products is, we took that from the city, or the state statutes involving anti-smoking.
All right, questions for Jeff? Roy?
Could you just touch on why we're also including vaping or simulated activities?
Yes, we had a discussion of that. In fact, we talked with you about that. And the issue is, we saw it, and we've seen this in other local restaurants and bars, for example. When you have an anti-smoking ordinance, as we do in Lincoln, and you put the enforcement on the back of the bar operators, bartenders, for example, they're looking across a bar, they see somebody who's vaping. They don't know if they're vaping or smoking. They have a responsibility to enforce that. So that's why a lot of the establishments don't allow vaping in their establishment. By the same token, you've got a bus driver who's responsible for operating his bus, staying on schedule. He or she looks out, sees somebody that's within the zone, rather than burden them with trying to figure out whether they're vaping or smoking. We thought it would be more appropriate just to outlaw vaping as well.
All right. Other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward.
Good afternoon, members of council. Less weighty matter today than when I appeared here last time, because we were wrestling with the transportation development plan.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Thank you.
I will. Richard Schmeling, and I am at 4612 Van Dorn Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68506. And I will give you my phone number too, in case anybody wants to call and give me a bad time. I would hope that the city attorney will pay close attention to this, because I have some problems with the language of the resolution. Okay.
Mr. Schmeling, could you speak into the microphone, please?
Thank you, thank you. Except for this next part, I'm not going to do any speaking. I'm going to do some miming. This goes back to my acting days. So please pay close attention. Have I simulated smoking? I think I have. If the vaping is the problem, why include the simulated? Just say vaping, I think. But I certainly don't want to be banned from riding the StarTran buses by going through that pantomime at a bus shelter within 15 feet of a bus stop sign. Now, it seems to me there are some other issues with it. I don't know if Mr. Davis talked about this 15 feet of a transit facility perimeter line, but I'm not sure that's necessary. I bet we have some bus mechanics that smoke, and if we make them go 15 feet beyond the perimeter of the facility line, then they're going to have to walk quite a ways, and it's going to take them longer to do a smoke break, and the StarTran buses may not get fixed. So I think you need to kind of take a good hard look at that. I will tell you this, that from riding StarTran frequently, the no smoking signs are up in the shelters downtown. I didn't see any at the state office building yet. There was an instance where there was a lady that was in the shelter smoking a cigarette. I said, ma'am, there's been a policy change and you shouldn't be smoking in here. And she looked at me and kind of shook her head. And she says, oh, I was just lighting up. And she did get up and walk out of the shelter. Another day I was in there. Those bus shelters can be sort of like a wind tunnel. And sometimes when the wind is blowing, it goes right through the shelter. There was a gentleman at one end of the shelter smoking a cigarette, and a lady down at the far end, and she very politely said, sir, it's against the rules for you to be smoking in a bus shelter or within 15 feet of it. And he apologized to her, left the shelter, and smoked outside. So what I'm seeing is some good things, some voluntary compliance, and I hope we see a lot of that. I'm a little concerned that we're throwing the monkey on the back of the bus drivers to enforce this resolution, simply because bus drivers have a lot of things to be concerned about, a lot of things to worry about. If all we're going to do is have the bus driver perhaps stop the bus, and as he sees somebody smoking, saying, you can't do that, that's against the policy, that's one thing. But if we're going to then require the StarTran driver to get on the radio, call the dispatcher, and say, I've got somebody smoking at such and so location, that's a complication I don't think the StarTran drivers need. By the same token, if you made it an ordinance and the police had to come out, I suspect the police would not like getting smoking calls at the bus stops. There is one other situation that I encountered that's kind of something for fodder for the city attorney to deal with. I'm standing at a bus stop at 48th and Calvert waiting for the bus. The bus stop sign is on the parking about 2 feet away from the curb. A lady in a car pulls up right beside me. She's smoking a cigarette in her car. Is she violating this resolution? Technically, I suppose she is. Do we care? I don't know. I don't know how you wrestle with this problem because there are so many different situations that you can imagine. But before you just simply go ahead and do a blanket approval of this resolution, I think you ought to maybe look at the wording of it and maybe do some fine tuning of it. That's all I have today.
Questions? John?
Well, 2 comments. I think this is one of those good faith efforts, and as you gave us several examples, it sounds like people are already becoming aware of courtesy to their fellow bus riders and so forth, so hopefully this will stimulate more of that. And then secondly, I've got to say, you did a first today. In my 17 years, I've never had a mime testify before.
Thank you. I'm glad, John. I'm glad I was able to set that precedent for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Kathy Sifkin. I live at 5631 Coyote Circle. Hadn't intended to testify in this because I'm here on the next issue, but this is just mind-boggling to me. I'm not sure where this came from. So the objective here is to take away the transportation of people that are trying to get to their jobs because they are walking past a bus stop and they're vaping or smoking. This is just harsh. And I'm surprised that you're considering this kind of a resolution. Because we have hardworking people out there. They don't have the money to own a car, and they can't afford a taxi. So you're going to take away the only choice of transportation if they smoke or vape in an area that they're not aware that they shouldn't be there, because apparently there aren't signs up everywhere. And the previous testifier made mention of the fact that folks are voluntarily complying. So I'm not sure that this is a good use of our resources, and I would suggest that you rethink this whole issue. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. Rebuttal?
Well, the way it will be enforced is the bus operators have the ability, at their discretion, to not allow people to ban them from their bus. So if you ask somebody not to smoke around the bus stop and they continue to smoke, then you have an opportunity to enforce it by keeping them from smoking. And it's possible that there'll be a few circumstances where there'll be some difficulty with this. However, if you're a smoker in modern America, I think you've become accustomed to being told where you can and cannot smoke. This adds that list, but it's not going to be the first time any of these smokers have been asked politely not to smoke in a specific area.
Questions?
Just have a question.
Yeah.
To Mike Davis, if he could come up.
Yeah, Mike, please come up.
Mike Davis, Transit Manager.
Thanks, Mike. This came up kind of unannounced at our last hearing, and has StarTran done any analysis of how this might impact ridership at all? Any sense of how that might be?
We haven't necessarily done how this might impact ridership. We have kind of looked at positives and negatives of implementing something like this. And I think there are some very good aspects of it. One thing that tends to happen is people tend to take one last puff and then walk in the bus and puff again and bring that smoke into the bus. So just the fact of keeping individuals a little bit away from that front door when they're smoking or boarding a bus keeps that out of the bus itself. We also have, as smoking moved out of a lot of facilities, people tended to gravitate towards bus shelters and use bus shelters, and even if they're not riding the bus, and therefore making it inconvenient or uncomfortable for people that may be taking the bus by having them wait outside while someone uses a bus shelter to use as a smoking shelter. So those are some of the positive aspects that we see coming from this, is being able to use transit facilities as they were intended. I know personally I've seen, I was walking towards my bus shelter waiting for the bus, and a bicyclist came down the sidewalk, got off his bike, got in the shelter and smoked his cigarette, and then got back on his bicycle and went on his way. And we see that type of thing happen often with our bus shelters. As far as enforcement goes, we do see that probably as one of the more difficult things to be doing. And I think being able to place signage up as reminders at bus stops that I think will be a good start. And I think bus drivers, there might be a little bit inconsistency among bus drivers. Some bus drivers may again, the intention will be to give warnings, just a reminder not to smoke at bus stops. And if it's continually becomes a problem, then yeah, they may say or not let them on the bus. But we want to make it appropriate and give warnings. But it is a little bit difficult to implement on that side of it.
Okay. Thank you.
John?
Yeah, Mr. Davis, are there any StarTran rules it has that might substitute for this resolution that would apply to the bus shelters?
We don't, we don't allow smoking on buses themselves, and even for drivers, we require drivers to walk to the back of the bus to smoke so that they're not smoking right at the door. The rules that we have for drivers are very consistent with what is in the resolution here as far as vaping and the other things. So, but other than that, I don't know of any other rules.
Did you say you let drivers smoke at the back of the bus?
Bus drivers are allowed to, they have to walk, a bus is 35 feet long typically, and we ask them to not smoke at the door, but to walk away from the front door of the bus. And that
Outside the bus, though?
Outside the bus.
Oh, outside, okay.
Yep.
You said, okay.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying.
Roy?
Are you aware of any examples of other municipalities that don't allow smoking near bus stops?
We heard from our TDP consultant last time that there are some other locations that have included that in ordinance to not have smoking at bus stops. But I have not done additional research beyond that.
Okay, other questions? Mike, how would someone be banned from using StarTran? What's the process there?
Well, typically someone, an individual for violating the rules of StarTran could be kicked off a bus if it's appropriate. They would have to check with dispatch first and let them know what's going on. And if it's a repeat offender, then they could be suspended for an extended period of time. So it could be just one trip. If that person continues to break the rules, it could be for a suspended period of time.
Has anyone been banned from using StarTran?
Not,
because
yes.
suspension and banned are two different things, right?
Right. Nobody has been banned that I'm aware of from using StarTran at all, but I know individuals have been suspended.
And typically, how long is a suspension period?
It will vary depending on the offense that was made.
Okay. Given the resolution, if somebody is caught multiple times that smoking in a transit center facility or bus shelter, would you put a policy in place around whether you would suspend them or if, say, it was 5 times or 10 times? Do you know what that would be?
Again, it would probably just be brought to our attention that this person continues to repeat that, and we'll hear that from multiple drivers. And at that point, we would probably talk to the individual and implement a suspension. Is probably going to be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somewhere in that time frame. And if the bus is your means of transportation, being off the bus for a week can be a pretty dramatic thing, and we usually see a suspension of that nature fix the problem.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Thank you. Any other staff questions or anything? All right. We'll move on to the next item.
All right, next then is item 25, ordering construction of sidewalks along the west side of 48th Street from Holdridge to Layton Street where sidewalks currently do not exist.
Good afternoon. Thomas Schaefer, Interim Public Works and Utilities Director. Well, the municipal code allows for the council to order in sidewalks where there are none. As a result of a couple of requests from members of the public, we are bringing forward to you today to have a hearing on sidewalk on the west side of 48th Street from Layton to Holdridge, and that's along the East Campus area, if you want that kind of visual in your head. Although there is a sidewalk on the east side of North 48th, this west side appears to be a very well-used piece of the city's right-of-way. And we have a picture that was submitted to us by the public showing that. I'd ask, I guess, that you consider the following in this, that generally sidewalks are part of our design standards. This particular stretch of sidewalk has been recommended in past studies of the area to be and is included in our long-range transportation plan, but also includes the idea that it should be a trail facility of 8 or 10 feet wide. There's probably been a variety of reasons why this sidewalk does not exist today, including that path that you see there is actually not on city property, but on UNL's property. The fence line is not, in all cases, the property line. There are street trees along there. There is a bridge that has been talked about needing improvement. There's narrow right-of-ways and the hope for federal trail funds. So all of these have been reasons why it has not been included in the past. Long-term operations and maintenance, if this is of trail width, then those would happen to fall on the Parks Department in terms of fixing and plowing the snow. If this is of sidewalk width, then Public Works would have the fixing cost and the adjacent property owner would have responsibility of the snow removal. There is currently a bridge crossing that is being studied as a part of the Dead Man's Run project. I understand that they hope to have this year the feasibility study completed, and if there are projects that are feasible, including maybe modifying this bridge, that the design work would start next year, and at the earliest, the very earliest, 2019 would be when the construction would be. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know the city attorney's office is also here, if you have any questions of them, and planning department as well.
Questions? John?
Because this is the university's land for the most part between Holdridge and Layton, would the university pay for the sidewalks if we so ordered?
My understanding is yes, we would assess those costs to them as a special assessment.
Cindy?
Not sure what all the laughter's about up here. Okay, so I have a couple questions. One is the width, talking sidewalk width or trail width. And it doesn't seem to me that it's very wide over there. I'm wondering if we did a trail width, how much would actually be the responsibility for snow removal of the university? And would that, and I'm guessing that would change if we did sidewalk width.
If we do trail width, then Parks Department takes up that responsibility.
I'm sorry.
They take care of all of the trail width sidewalks that we have that are part of the trail system. If it's sidewalk width, which would be a 5-foot sidewalk, then that would be the adjacent property owner's responsibility. But once we got beyond that, then it would be the Parks Department, because it would tie into our trail system.
Mm. I live out in that area, and I see a lot of people walking over on that path. I don't see any bicycles, or mostly they stay to the east side of the road where there's already a sidewalk. If we're out there and that over there, that's where the park is, and there's access for people to go in and out of different facilities. And on this particular side, the west side of the road, it's all fenced, the university property, correct?
As I understand it and have driven it, my memory recollects that that's correct.
All right, other questions? Jane?
Has the university been requested to put in a sidewalk?
There have been different discussions, as I understand it, when we've had different activities out there about that, but I am not, I guess, knowledgeable as to if there have been any direct requests to them.
Cindy?
So that I understand it, the procedure is, we would order it be put in, and then the university would be asked to put it in, and they would have a certain amount of time to put it in?
They would be given a certain amount of time to do that. If we're talking generally and normally, and so generally you would make that order. We would give the property owners time to work with that. If they chose not to, we would come back before you and ask for this assessment that would order it in with the cost being assessed to them, and the city would actually perform the work or have it hired out to be done and then assess the cost to the university. So they could, we wouldn't have to assess them, they could comply with that request and not have to incur any assessment from the city.
So what you're asking us to do today is actually to issue something requiring that the property owner put in the sidewalk?
That's correct. At this point, we're only at step one, which would be determining whether you want to order that sidewalk in or not.
Thomas, what's the cost from running that sidewalk from Holdridge down to Layton?
The estimates that we showed on the fact sheet, I think, were around $80,000. That would be construction, that would be the engineering type work that we anticipate that would have to occur with it.
Is that just a regular width sidewalk, or is that trail width?
That's 5 feet, yes.
Okay. Don, you're sitting up here.
Just going back to Councilman Camp's question about the assessment, I know there was maybe some question about whether the university is the state entity or owned by the board, the Board of Regents, governed by the Board of Regents, could be assessed. Well, I believe it's pretty clear from the case involving the city of Lincoln and property owned by the Board of Regents from 1983 that it was considered eligible, if you want to call it that, for special assessment, a tax in that regard. There's a big distinction in the law between general taxation and being exempt from general taxation, and the distinguishment being levied a special assessment for the benefits conferred on the property. What throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into it perhaps is the issue with the 8 or 10 feet, because typically the sidewalk assessments that we do are the standard width, the 5 foot assessment, for the 5 foot sidewalk. And I believe the estimated cost is $70,000 for, actually $80,000, but $70,000 of that would be assessed based on what I understand from the fact sheet. The $10,000 city subsidy relates to the 2 intersections and some ramp reconstruction that would need to be done there, and some work in that area, and that's why that difference. Obviously, I don't think the city would be in a position to necessarily assess the full width of an 8 or 10 foot trail, because in my thinking, the benefit conferred by the sidewalk, is it going to be enhanced any because it's any wider? I think there'd be a pretty viable argument to say no. So, but yeah, I think it's well established, at least from the case law, that we can't assess the property.
Roy, then John.
So we're talking maybe a sidewalk, maybe a trail. How do we know which one we're voting on?
That's not a question for me.
Well, who will decide whether it's a sidewalk or trail and when?
Well, I think you're ordering a construction of a sidewalk. That's what your resolution is.
Right. So why are we talking about a trail?
I wanted you to have all the facts in front of you.
So someone could come back later and say, we're going to make this a trail?
And we have in certain cases where we found that we needed a trail link, we've constructed, say, another 5 feet next to the original 5 in that particular instance.
The authority that's provided in the ordinance for council to order in construction of sidewalks, that's the language, or none have existed. 14.8070, and it provides for 45 days. Generally, we provide a longer period of time for the property owner to construct the sidewalk.
And if someone wanted to later make this a trail, what's the procedure there?
Well, to make a trail, Parks being the owners of trails would, they are right in the middle of updating long-range transportation plan, and this is in the long-range transportation plan to be a trail. It's being ranked, and if Parks were to find the funding, if Parks were to, if that were to be ranked more highly than it is now, then that's the case.
Would that require further council action?
It would be in your CIP probably. It'd probably be a CIP project that would call for that action, but probably not a specific item like this.
David?
David Carey with the Planning Department. In relation to the trail versus sidewalk question and topic, I think it's something to consider as we talk about this. The timing of this is kind of the crux of the issue. Is it better to try to get a 5-foot sidewalk in and then wait for a trail to come in later with the potential of some throwaway costs if we wanted to put the trail in? There may be some benefit to working with the university on a more long-term agreement on trying to get a trail in versus a 5-foot sidewalk sooner, but those discussions haven't happened. So that I just put that out there. The trail is part of our long-range plan as a segment of our trail system, but it's not a project that is actively being pursued right now.
John?
A couple of questions for you, gentlemen. You mentioned that photograph you showed us, Mr. Schaefer, was on the university's right-of-way. You said there were trees there, and driven by it many times, so I'm trying to visualize how much right-of-way is there that the city owns from the curb on 48th going west?
It varies through there. We were just measuring that before we came down, and in one place I found, and this is from the aerial, so I'm not going to say it's real accurate, but it was around 8.5 feet in some places. Other places it was 12, 15 feet. So it varies depending on where the property line is. You can probably see there it jogs a little bit around.
So that
as
would
you go
lead to
down.
my second question. Since the trees are in the right-of-way to do a trail and probably a sidewalk, you're going to sacrifice those trees.
Definitely a potential that some of those trees are going to be in the way, yes.
Unless the university would allow an easement on its property for a sidewalk or something. Does the university know about our hearing today?
I believe they do.
Have we had any communication from it?
Yes, we've been talking with them. Roger Feigard's been talking with some of them. I know David talked with some of them as well. And I understand maybe they are here today. They indicated they knew the hearing was.
Okay. I guess I'd be curious with some of these new revelations if we ought to proactively get a word from them too. And we'd also bring up the trails idea.
Well, they were definitely involved in the conversation about the sidewalk. The real estate management person was involved in some email exchanges as recently as within the last 2 weeks. So they were aware of the hearing.
Did they express any objections or?
They expressed some thoughts about an issue that went back 8 years ago and thinking that this might have been involved in that, and the sidewalk wasn't going to be included in whatever was being considered 8 years ago, but it was a PUD, and this has nothing to do with the PUD and what happened 8 years ago. So.
And do we have any plans to widen 48th Street?
Doubt it.
In this area, I don't believe.
Okay.
Not at this time in our long-range transportation plan.
Ms. Lamb, do you have, this is your district, and I know there's been correspondence and people have expressed a desire. Do you have any thoughts on whether we continue this? Or?
That must better left for the discussion period of our
Okay.
public hearing.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for these gentlemen? All right, thank you very much. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward.
Good afternoon. Danny O'Byrne, 2344 North 44th Street. So I'm one of those people who has requested that a sidewalk be put in here that Mr. Schaefer was talking about, and that's my beautiful photography work that you saw. I had included on one of the emails. So you know the issue here on the west side of 48th Street between Layton and Holdridge. It's fairly heavily trafficked area. I see people there all the time. I have seen, not many, but I have seen even bicyclists there, which probably isn't safe, and they probably should go to the other side of the road. But I mean, I can talk about me personally. I walk this path to my gym. I go to Blue Moon Fitness there on 48th Street. I would like to be able to jog there, and I have in the past, but I recently had last January, I had my meniscus repaired, and no better way to find out that an unpredictable grass and dirt path isn't great for an unpredictable knee. So that brought that to the forefront for me. But my girlfriend and I also occasionally walk to Target, and the Super Saver there is now the closest grocery store to our neighborhood now that we don't have the little Hy-Vee Main Street grocery store anymore. So if we're feeling ambitious and want to get our steps in and we need a few grocery items, we can walk to Super Saver as well. So that's just a personal story for me. I see lots of people there all the time, usually carrying backpacks and looking student-ish, but I don't want to presume they're all students. And so I would love for there to be a sidewalk there. As far as the issues between trails and sidewalks, they both sound great to me. But if a trail is going to take us 5 or 7 years before it's done, obviously that's suboptimal. So, thank you.
All right, questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right, any staff questions? All right, we'll move on to the next item.
All right, next, public hearing ordinances, second reading. Item 26, amending Chapter 8.20 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to Lincoln Food Code to add a new section numbered 8.20.070 to require food handlers and food managers to prevent contamination of food from hands.
Good afternoon, Judy Halstead, Health Director for Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department. I need to get a couple of things into the record, so this is a good time for council to stretch if they need to. Give you a little bit of history, and as a reminder, the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department has a Board of Health that you approve. You appoint those board members with the mayor and with the county board. As an advisory group to that Board of Health is our Food Advisory Committee. And our Food Advisory Committee advises the department and the Board of Health and you as elected officials and the mayor regarding food policy for Lincoln. As we move forward with today's discussion, I want to bring a couple things to your attention because this has been a process that has gone on now for about the last couple of years. We've talked about what is going to be commonly referred to as no bare hand contact, but what we're really talking about is protecting the public's health. You have had a few opportunities in the past, John in particular, to help protect the health of Lincoln and Lancaster County by policies that you establish. One significant one for Lincoln was the smoking ban in 2004. And I will tell you, this has the same reach as the smoking ban, because this does impact everyone who purchases food, who takes part in eating food in our jurisdiction, and helps to protect those individuals and protect the health of those individuals. So it does rise to a higher level than what you're used to me bringing to you. But that Food Advisory Committee has worked with us for many years. And as a task force of that Food Advisory Committee that started in December of 2014, they looked at how to protect the public from foodborne illnesses by looking at how food servers in particular potentially contaminate ready-to-eat food. And so that's what we're talking about today. That task force was made up of our staff, and here today is Scott Holmes, who's our manager for environmental health, and I also want to ask Justin Daniel just to stand for the moment. Justin is our new supervisor for our food safety program. Justin replaces Joyce Jensen. Many of you who have known Joyce retired from the health department in February. She was an employee of over 30 years for the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department. And much of Joyce's work went into this policy as well. We also have a couple of those committee members with us today. I think you're going to hear from two of them. Jim Partington, who represents the Nebraska Restaurant Association, and Kathy Sifkin, who represents the Grocers Association. She will, both of them, I understand, will be testifying today. But this has been a long, hard work of that committee to balance protecting the public's health with balancing what has to happen for food handlers. So the proposed ordinance that you have in front of you is new. It is based in part on recommendations from the FDA on the food code that is recommended nationally. It is not recommended, it is not mirrored after the Nebraska Food Code, which is what you usually have when we come forward. This ordinance, to be very clear, is more stringent than what the Nebraska Department of Ag has. And in part, it's because as a policy leader and with the other staff in my department, we're not going to wait for the state anymore on this particular issue. We believe that we know what it takes from evidence-based practice to protect the public's health. We believe we know what we can do to help reduce norovirus outbreaks and other foodborne illnesses. And we believe this policy is fair. It attempts to address that issue, but it's also fair to those individuals who are in the industry. It does for those highly susceptible populations, and by those we mean, for example, child cares or hospitals, that they would have no bare hand contact. And many of you talk to me about automatically going to gloves, and gloves is one of those things that individuals can use when they're handling ready-to-eat food. But there are a few others. So we're talking about deli tissues, or we're talking about spatulas or tongs, obviously single-use gloves that we've talked about that need to be changed as tasks change. And there's also some, in Wisconsin, we have what we call dispensing equipment, which is almost like an assembly line of bread rolls that come down and you can only take that next bread roll in line. So there's a number of different avenues. We're not specifically telling a food establishment what they have to use, but they have to use one of those if they're working with highly susceptible individuals or highly susceptible populations. If not, we're encouraging to use no bare hand contact, but they have some other options. The owner of a food establishment can work with their food inspector to put the plan in place, a written plan in place on how they educate their employees about employee illness and their policies that they use when their employees are ill. In addition, food handlers are required to double wash their hands when they're handling ready-to-eat food, or in addition to one other strategy that will be put in place in that plan. So they can either use no bare hand, or they can put their plan in place that's approved by their food inspector. There are some exceptions, and I want to be clear about what the exceptions are because this was negotiated through that committee that we talked to you about. For those individuals who are garnishing drinks, we usually think of bartenders. They would be excluded from the policy. Individuals who are washing fruits and vegetables are excluded from the policy. And individuals who are handling the food before cooking would be excluded from the policy. So before you, what we feel like we have done is to put together a policy that is reasonable but can help address our foodborne illnesses. Many of you know that it's estimated that 1 in 6 individuals will become ill with foodborne illness in any given time. So obviously at least one of you probably in the last year have been ill with foodborne illness. The other piece that I want to make sure that we're clear about on this policy before I answer any questions is that as we have talked about other policy initiatives, the public has some control. They have control over how much they drink. They can have control over how much they smoke. We don't have control as individuals as to the food safety of those individuals who are in that food establishment. So if I'm going into Carl's restaurant, as a consumer, I don't have control over whether Carl washed his hands. These are the safeguards and the protections that in public health we believe we need to put in place to be able to safeguard the public's health. And so with that, hopefully we've had an opportunity to share with you why we're bringing this policy forward and also options for food establishments. We have over 1,200 food establishments. We have approximately 10,000 food handlers that we permit each year, and those permits are good for 2 years. So it gives you an understanding of the breadth of the number of individuals that are impacted by this change. So we're looking at October 1st as our implementation date for this change. But we've also met with food establishments. All of the food establishment managers were invited to participate in 2 meetings in February. The Food Advisory Committee members voted in support of this policy change. The Board of Health members also voted in support of this policy change. And so it's now before you today. So I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. Justin and Scott are also here. We also, if you're counting attorneys, our attorney is also here. Tim C. is also here. And I know that some of our committee members also want to testify. So with that, I'll conclude, but answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Cindy?
Okay, so I'm thinking of restaurants that I go into where not everyone has necessarily even a food handler's permit. Servers, for instance, they don't generally have food handler's permits, correct?
They're supposed to.
They are supposed to?
Yes.
Oh, good, okay.
So we want to ask where you go, Cindy.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, hand washing is really important too.
It is.
And it is, and I agree with that. And what I'm thinking of though is when there's, the guys behind the window, they're cooking up and they put it out, and then the servers do things like make toast, butter bagels, whatever they do on the other side of that counter. So now, is this going to require that they put on gloves or some other form of
or their owner may request from their food inspector that they work on a formalized plan? And that formalized plan would mean that they would wash their hands twice. So when they come up to be in charge of doing that, that they would need to be washing their hands twice. And one other technique. So it might include identifying fingernail cleaning or something to that manner. They would have to have extra protection to protect their hands to do that work. Yes, that's what we're saying.
Okay. And I guess I see that as kind of problematic for the customers. So just because there's not generally a hand washing sink out there on the front of the line, they call it, to go from customer to customer, I'm a little concerned about that. And foodborne illness generally is passed through other types of food rather than the toasted bread product or something of that nature.
Actually, the contamination of hands from individuals who haven't washed their hands after they've used the restroom is actually one of the most common, and it's norovirus is the one that you're familiar hearing about, and that's usually because individuals didn't wash their hands appropriately.
After using the bathroom.
Correct.
Thank you.
Jane?
Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, but most food establishments are required to have a hand sink within so many feet of serving the public.
They're required to have a hand washing sink, and we'll be happy to share more details about what they're required to have. But correct, they're required to have food handlers permits and hand washing sinks.
Other questions? All right, thanks, Judy.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this item, please come forward.
Chairman Fellers, members of the City Council, my name is Jim Partington. I'm Executive Director of the Nebraska Restaurant Association, and our offices are at 1610 South 70th Street in Lincoln. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of the proposed amendment to the Lincoln Food Code. This update, as the director has said, is a result of a series of meetings of the Food Advisory Committee and a work group formed by that committee held over a period of 2 years. And I think we've been discussing it even longer than that, so it's been around for a while. The work group was directed to evaluate the no bare hands contact with ready-to-eat food protocol and determine if it could be enacted in a manner that accomplished the objective of the policy without placing an undue burden on food establishments. All members of the work group shared the common objective of maintaining the highest standards of food safety in the community while recognizing the unique operating environment of some food establishments. I believe that what we accomplished with the proposed amendment is an excellent example of private-public sector cooperation and working together in support of a common goal, that of preventing foodborne illness in our community. We appreciate the understanding, technical support, and guidance of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Health Department throughout this process, and the Nebraska Restaurant Association supports this amendment. I'll be pleased to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Carl?
Yes, thanks, Jim, for being here. I'm not going to ask you to identify them, but I'm guessing some of your members may have had an illness come through them, and just what would be the impact on the business itself if they do have an outbreak of a foodborne illness?
Without addressing any specific business, I would say that the restaurant industry understands the tremendous adverse impact that any foodborne illness in the community has on the entire restaurant community. So that's why we are so interested in maintaining the highest standards of food safety within the community of Lincoln and around the state.
Okay, thank
Very important to the industry.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Sifkin, and I'm here representing the Nebraska Grocery Industry Association. I serve on the advisory committee, and we have several grocery store owners or representatives of those grocery stores that also served on this task force. And we literally spent 2 weeks or 2 years discussing the entire issue, and at the end of the day, everyone agreed that this is a step in the right direction. Food safety is one of the most important issues that we address in our industry, and I know the Restaurant Association and restaurant industry agrees with that. And so moving forward, we think that this is a solution to getting some of those foodborne illnesses under control. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Questions? Cindy?
Hi, thanks for coming today. Okay, so I noticed that there's an exemption for those that are washing fruits and vegetables. Are those that are stocking in the produce departments of grocery stores, are they going to be required then to have no bare hands contact with fruits and vegetables in the grocery stores under this?
No, they will not. They aren't really ready-to-eat foods are foods that have been prepared so that you can just eat them right away. Fruits and vegetables aren't part of the produce section is not included.
Okay. Thank you.
In the grocery store, it's more like if you take donuts off the tray, if you do your double hand washing and your nail brush and do things that will mitigate the transfer of norovirus from the hands to the ready-to-eat food product. And an example would be donuts. Those viruses should be removed from your hands by the time you get to the point where you're using bare hands to transfer product from the tray to another tray.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. All right, we'll move on to the next item.
All right, our next item is item 27, amending chapter 4.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to the Lincoln Airport by adding a new section numbered 5.28.060 entitled Unmanned Aircraft Systems Intent to state the intent of the City Council in enacting regulations for the operation of unmanned aircraft systems by adding a new section numbered 4.28.070 entitled Unmanned Aircraft Systems Definitions to provide definitions of the terms, by adding a new section numbered 4.28.080 to establish operating restrictions for unmanned aircraft, and by adding a new section numbered 4.28.090 to establish penalties.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. This ordinance was brought to us by the Lincoln Airport Authority. They've got a number of representatives here, and we'll address the reason they brought this to the City of Lincoln. I would just say that Lincoln has not been immune from the tremendous growth in the number of drones, both for hobby purposes and also for a whole range of professional and occupational uses in just the last few years. What we've seen nationally is the FAA has announced that they are preempting, that they feel like they have the role in setting out those regulations. It's not the purpose or the intent of the City of Lincoln to challenge that preemption. By passing this ordinance, you would just put the city in a position to enforce those regulations on a local basis. We would also anticipate, as drones become more prevalent in society, that those regulations will evolve and change over time, and we may be coming back to you with some changes in the future. But this at least gets us started on that road and allows some local enforcement of those regulations.
Questions for Jeff? I have one, since it doesn't reference it in the copy that was in our, what would a penalty be?
That talks about an infraction.
Infraction, okay.
Yeah, so that's the lowest level of penalty that's possible.
So
$100 fine.
Okay.
It's not a criminal, it's not a misdemeanor, it's not a criminal penalty. Okay. Like a traffic ticket, essentially.
Okay. But you'd still have to fill it out on your liquor commit.
Yes, you would.
All right, thank you. All right, next testifier.
Chairman, members of the council, good afternoon. My name is Bill Austin. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Baylor Revenant, Curtis, Grimmer & Witt, 1248 O Street, Suite 600, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68508. I'm here representing the Airport Authority of the City of Lincoln. As Jeff said, this was a request by the Airport Authority. The genesis is the discussions that were had around the upcoming Guardians of Freedom Air Show that the Lincoln Airport is hosting May 6th, 7th, and 8th. And there were concerns about people utilizing drones for the possibility of hovering over or near the aircraft, which would obviously be very dangerous. This also lended to discussions about whether or not there were just general concerns because of the proliferation of drones and the use of unmanned aircraft systems within the city. I think that there's just been hundreds of thousands of them that have been recently sold in the United States. So we thought it was timely to address the issue. This ordinance is not an attempt to extend the jurisdiction of the city or add to regulations that are not already in place by the Federal Aviation Administration. Actually, this is an attempt, this really hopefully does two things. One is that it highlights the regulations that have already been enacted by the Federal Aviation Administration, and also gives an opportunity for local law enforcement to address a situation as opposed to reporting it to the Federal Aviation Administration and waiting months for a response. As Jeff said, this is the lowest possible penalty. We're really just trying to get a handle on this and have an ability to address a situation as it may come up. This would address civil aircraft, civil unmanned aircraft, only to the extent that there would be any reckless use of the aircraft endangering life or property, any violation of a notice to airmen, or any use of the aircraft without registration and markings as required by the Federal Aviation Administration. More particularly, it has additional regulations regarding model aircraft, but again, these are the same requirements that are already imposed by the Federal Aviation Administration to the effect that they do not exceed 400 feet in altitude, that they notify the tower if they intend to fly within 5 feet of the airport, and they must be within the visual line of sight of the operator. So those are the restrictions, and as I said, it really is an attempt to have an ability to have some local enforcement of what is already in place. Now, again, as Jeff mentioned, the Federal Aviation Administration has generally indicated in some of its memorandums that it has preempted the field, and we are not in a position to dispute or disagree with that. This is consistent with their regulations, and we think that based upon, I think that the city attorney agrees with this, that based upon the nuisance authority of the City of Lincoln, this is something that is not inconsistent with regulations that the FAA would have imposed. With me today also is Mr. David Herring, the Executive Director of the Airport Authority, and Mr. Bob McNally, who is the Deputy Director for Operations. They're here if you have any questions about how this would work or why we were seeking it. And I did want to say thank you to the mayor and the city attorney's office for their willingness to work with us in developing an ordinance.
Roy.
You said 5 feet. Did you mean a different measurement within the?
What did I say?
You said 5 feet of
From
the
the
airport.
Oh, I think they're a little bit further, 5 miles. I'm sorry.
That's what I thought I read, so just want to make sure that's clear.
You know, I told you it was a pretty limited regulation. Sorry.
The question I have is on registration and markings as required by Federal Aviation Administration regulations. Are these unmanned aircrafts required to get registration from the city or from the FAA?
Only from the Federal Aviation Administration. Yeah, this was, and I turned to Dave and Bob, I think this was in December that they sent out a notice requiring all aircraft, all unmanned aircraft that are under half a pound, or excuse me, over half a pound, I'm sorry, say things wrong. Yeah, over 0.55 to be registered. And I understand that there's been some pretty significant compliance with that.
Thank you.
Carl.
I'd like to have Bob or Dave, whoever. So, was interested in this and did a little research to see, what's going on. And FAA reports that there are about 100 incidents a month occurring in airports around the country. And there was a report from the 6 months prior to the end of January, and I looked for Lincoln but didn't find it. So have we had any incidents reported at the Lincoln Airport?
Turn that one to you. We have not have any reported near misses.
Could you introduce yourself? And step up to the mic and introduce yourself.
Bob McNally, 3101 West Branch Oak Road, Raymond. We have no known instances of a near miss or close call involving a civilian aircraft and a drone or UAS. We have had several reasons and opportunities to coordinate with local users, though. They've been calling and meeting the federal requirement to notify the airport.
Thank you.
All right. Roy?
So let's say I have a newly purchased drone from one of our nice establishments here in town, and it's over a pound, so it meets this standard. And I want to go fly this with my kids out at one of the city parks that is within 5 miles of the airport. What do I have to do?
Members of the council, Dave Herring, Executive Director of Lincoln Airport. As of right now, according to both the proposed ordinance and federal regulations, you would have to provide notice to both the airport and the air traffic control tower at this time is the requirement, and then also comply with, assuming that it's registered and all of the other items that we mentioned. But it's basically just a notification requirement.
Okay, and how do we expect Lincoln Police to enforce this? Who's going to say, okay, you didn't make the call? Who's going to say this weighs too much? Or who's going to say it flew too high? How do you measure how high it flies?
Well, obviously, even the at the federal level, they would have some practical difficulty in enforcing this on a regular basis. But if there was an egregious violator, or if there was an accident, or one of these came down, then you would have an ability to investigate it, determine that there was a violation, and notify and/or ticket the person. But frankly, we recognize that there's some real problems in short of a really long butterfly net catching a lot of these, But most of it, hopefully, it's an educational process too. Because the more people become aware of this, the more the article in the paper this morning, I think, was beneficial for people to say, oh, wait a minute, maybe there are some restrictions that we have to be aware of. So it helps in that regard, but I understand the practical issue.
Well, on the practical side, I'm just concerned we'd be handing a Gordian knot to the Lincoln Police Department. How does it's tough enough for them to enforce our fireworks ordinances, but how are they going to enforce this? So is somebody else going to be doing the work and saying, here, LPD, we have a violation and this is the case, and they just write a citation? Or are they going to be expected to investigate these?
Well, I guess we'd have to have some experience as to how often we would have a violation, but I think that if there was a persistent violation, at least we have an opportunity for someone at the airport to say, hey, someone has been, either is unaware of or is flagrantly violating the ordinance, and we'd like you to investigate it. There's always going to be the problems of tracking that person down. But that's about, I don't think we're expecting, I should let Dave speak to it, but I don't think anyone is expecting the Lincoln Police Department to actively enforce this in terms of going out on their own and checking, but it would probably be more on a complaint basis.
Okay, other questions?
Could I actually just address that as well?
Please do.
One of the items that's out there, one of the things that makes drones so attractive to people is their ease of flight. And one of the hardest things to get a handle on from the ground is exactly how high something is. However, the people that do have a very good idea of how high something is are the pilots. Most of the incidents that are coming in are not coming in based upon ground-based violations. They are pilots that are reporting either close impact or vicinity on approach. And as no doubt this body knows, due to all of your assistance here recently with the protection of approach zones, an aircraft on approach is at its most vulnerable because it's slow, it's got all of its surfaces extended, and so that's where it's really going to be the most susceptible to any form of foreign impact, if you will, from a drone. And so generally these reports are going to be pilot report type things that come in from people that have observed them when they're landing or in some cases when they're taking off. So then you're going to get a very good idea of their height because the person's going to say, I was at this height and this is where I saw it.
And if I may, it's important to note that it is a mirror of the federal regulation, but it's intended to give some local authority to that. Federal regs, the FAA's federal regs, are enforced through civil action. So there's no local authority, no local action that can be taken in the event a drone is observed operating unsafely. There's nothing anyone can do currently to address that.
All right, other questions? So to recap, if I go out to, let's say, Holmes Lake, and I'm flying my drone, 100 feet in the air, I should have called the airport authority first to let them know that I'm operating.
Well,
more than 5 miles.
Yeah, Bob, do you have that?
Well, there's
map
several
which
parks
showed-
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oak Lake might be.
Okay. That gives us a good idea. All right, so if I'm in Fallbrook,
There you go.
I should have called the, yeah.
Yes.
Rolling Lake Park.
Hey, I don't know height and I don't know distance either, so, okay. And if I am flying one of these drones, would I know that I am encroaching on 400 feet? Does it tell me that I'm at 385 and, so then I know that I'm 15 feet?
I think it depends on the equipment.
Yeah.
There's a wide range of some very basic units and some very sophisticated unmanned aero systems, so it could, but it wouldn't necessarily have to.
Okay.
Again, it's incumbent upon the operator to know the standards and to follow those, which is one of the benefits of saying to the operator, you must contact the airport or air traffic, because there will be some education that takes place in that regard then.
So when the FAA requires people to register their drones that are above a half a pound, is that list publicly available for airport authorities such as yourself to contact those folks and let them know that there's some restriction in the area? Or is it widely known in the drone community that, hey, I should be outside the 5 mile radius?
I'm going to guess the latter at this point. I don't know. Would have been nice to purchase a drone to see what you get in the kit, Frank. So it would be helpful, but I'm going to guess that most of the people who are flying the drones, if they're either in clubs or if, however they would do it, that these regulations get to be known. And again, it's helpful to have a discussion like this so that there are people out there who, if they didn't know it, they begin to learn it. Otherwise, I can't tell you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak to these items, please come forward.
Members of council, my name is Matt Waite, 3420 Scottsdale Lane. I'm here on behalf of myself, but my day job is as a professor at UNL. I run the drone journalism lab at the College of Journalism. I am a pilot, and I do not begrudge you your frustration with the FAA. I have my own. But I want to offer you a word of caution. Part of the reason why the FAA is going so slow on these matters is it's very, very complicated. And these rules are going to change. They're going to change pretty dramatically. They may change in the next few months. They will continue to change as they go along. With this, you are committing the city to having to change with it and fairly frequently. You're also, there are also some unintended consequences here. My concerns are what kind of training is going to be available to the Lincoln Police Department. Registration, yes, the FAA requires registration, but is a Lincoln police officer going to know that hobbyists have one level of registration? The university has a separate set of registration. Commercial users have a separate set of registration documents that they have to have. They all look different. They all have different purposes. They all have different meanings. Who can operate in what regard? Hobbyists have slightly different rules from commercial operators, which have slightly different rules from government operators. Even within the university, we have a hard time dealing with this because in the College of Journalism, I have to fly as a commercial operator where engineering can actually apply for government permission because they're doing aeronautics research where I'm not. And where those lines are drawn changes regularly. I found out the hard way. I applied for government permission and then was told that the FAA does not consider education to be a government function. These things are all strange. There's a lot of gray areas and they're getting sorted out. I'm just concerned that if you take some of this to a logical extreme, you're putting a police officer in a position who has to now wonder, should I write a citation to a child who's flying a toy in their front yard no higher than the treetops? Obviously, some judgment has to come into play, but that is a technical violation of FAA regulations. They may be 4.5 miles from the airport and they may fly no higher than their rooftop, but they are operating an unmanned system and they are doing so inside of that 5-mile ring. And if you take it to the logical extension, I'm afraid what we're going to do, and I thought about this earlier today, what I'm afraid is we're going to get back to where we were in the drought of 2012 when the police were writing tickets for lawn watering and everybody was mad about that, and some semblance of judgment should be brought here. I am absolutely in favor of people following the rules. I am absolutely, as a pilot, I'm certainly in favor of people staying below 400 feet, staying as far from the airport as practically possible, and being safe. But I'm worried that the city is going to buy themselves some unintended consequences here.
Jane.
I'm also concerned about the drones flying too close to any air traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the way the ordinance is written, it's very general. So even
Yes.
if you had a commercial license for that unmanned drone, you still would not be allowed in that 5-mile radius, the way this is written.
No, you would. I mean, you'd have to ask for, or you'd have to call and notify. Under commercial rules, you have to actually file for some additional paperwork and get additional permission from the air traffic control. That wouldn't necessarily change with this. What I'm concerned about is you're putting a Lincoln police officer in the position of having to sort that out. And I'm encouraging you to consider the training requirements that are going to be involved to allow them to enforce that. I don't necessarily have a problem with a Lincoln police officer being able to write somebody a citation for operating in a careless and reckless manner. I just don't want them in a position where they're going to have to make a judgment call, and now the city's going to have to defend that decision without thinking through the training requirements that they're going to need to be able to tell the difference. If I and my students are out and we are operating fully within the rules and regulations, but our documents look different than a hobbyist and that's what they're accustomed to, that's going to create problems for us. If they are accustomed to us operating, but they come across another university researcher and they have a whole other set of documents, that's going to create problems for them. That's more of the issue that I have.
So you said that you were a pilot. Do you,
Yes.
you fly drones as well?
Yes.
Okay, so I think your issue is really section B, line 2, which is like line 18 and 19 of page 3, where it says within 5 miles of the Lincoln Airport, unless the airport authority has been notified.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like the couple lines that you're really interested in?
Yes, and I understand following the FAA's regulations and the existing regulations, and yes, you are supposed to do that, but I would disagree with earlier testimony that there is sort of widespread understanding that you have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy one of these things at a hobby store. You can walk down to Best Buy and buy one, and there is nothing in the box that says, hey, here are the rules, here's what you have to do, here's who you have to call. There is nowhere that's explained to you. The FAA is struggling with its education mission, trying to explain how to do that. There's been a substantial amount of debate among the manufacturers and the FAA about, do we have to do something at the point of sale?
Mm-hmm.
And the decision they made was no, they're not going to do that at the point of sale. They're going to expect the operator, before they go out and fly this, to register it with the FAA and maybe read something on a website that explains the rules. But if you're a parent and you've been at a Christmas morning, you're not going to sit around and read a website before you walk outside and start flying. Let's be real.
Is there a reasonable ceiling that they could be below within 5 miles of an airport? And I know I should probably be asking this question to the airport authority, but you're a pilot.
It all depends on distance. I apologize if I'm a little shaky here, but I was actually in Italy this last week, speaking about drones at an international journalism conference, and the rules in Italy are based on approach paths.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a 5 mile ring. It's actually the number of kilometers from the approach paths. So the shape is much different. It really depends on where you are, and it depends on which way the wind's blowing and which way the airport is landing people, where it becomes safely practical. If it is low, I mean, if we're talking literally treetops, if there are airplanes flying at treetop height further than, above the runway, we've got much bigger problems than drones. So
Because 400 feet is pretty
it's
high.
very high.
Yeah.
The rules actually under the FAA are that you have to fly within line of sight. My line of sight gets a little shorter every year. And really at about 300 feet, you're starting to lose sight of the thing.
Okay.
Earlier testimony, yes, they're right. It really depends on the drone about whether or not you can tell how high it is, whether or not you have telemetry that's right there. There's nothing on board that's telling you. There are some manufacturers that have started introducing geofences that will stop you at 400 feet and it will not go any higher. But that's a relatively new thing, and that's also on sort of more expensive models.
Okay. Jane?
This question goes back to your analogy of going to Best Buy and getting a drone and opening it the Christmas Day and taking it out and flying it. I guess wouldn't the ordinance would cover those that are in violation or not using the toy appropriately or the unmanned appropriately, and that's where I see law enforcement getting involved. It's complaint basis rather than really monitoring anyone and trying to go and seek them out for an infraction of it. So I see this as a good thing in that law enforcement would only be called out for those that are flying it inappropriately, and maybe a neighbor spotted it and think they're playing with it recklessly.
I'll give you a separate scenario that may be more illustrative. It's unlikely that person on Christmas morning with their kid flying in their front lawn anyone's ever going to know about it. It's as I say to my students, it's the proverbial tree falling in the woods if there's no one here to hear it kind of thing. 3 weeks ago now, my son and I went for dinner down in the Haymarket, and we were walking back to the parking garage, and from behind us came a drone flying no higher than the tops of cars, to the point where cars were actually sort of driving out of the way of it. He was flying straight down the middle of the road. He was no more than 10 feet from my son. And I was angry. I was actually quite angry and started looking around for the pilot, and saw him when he reached up and caught his drone. And I was going to go over there and give him a piece of my mind. He jumped in his truck and drove off quite fast, which told me everything I needed to know about whether or not he knew he was doing wrong. If a Lincoln police officer had happened to be there or drive by and seen that, that's when it's not going to be complaint-based. They'll have watched it go on, and I think any reasonable person see somebody flying in the middle of traffic and actually causing a traffic problem, that's operating in a reckless manner, a careless and reckless manner. So I'm a little worried about logical extremes. In cases like that, it's pretty obvious that I think something does need to be done. And currently, the most that the Lincoln police officer could do would be to take their name and report it to the FAA. University police do this now on game days. I didn't check in at the end of the season, but midway through the season, there were 5 drone pilots that were stopped from flying their drones over Memorial Stadium during a game, which is an exceptionally stupid thing to do, because if something were to happen, it were to go down, I don't know if you've been in Memorial Stadium lately, but there's not exactly a lot of room to move out of the way. Somebody could get seriously hurt doing that. Not only that, Memorial Stadium is its own class of airspace during the game. From an hour before to an hour after, it's actually national defense airspace. And flying into that unauthorized is punishable by up to a year in federal prison. They stopped these people, they got their identification, they reported that to the FAA, and they gave them a warning that said, if you come back and do this again, we'll take your drone from you. And that's pretty much all they can do. And as far as I know, nothing has happened to any one of them.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. You're very helpful. All right, anyone else wishing to speak this evening? All right. Any rebuttal or?
Briefly, I would say that I would agree with much of what Professor Wade said. I do think this puts a fair amount of discretion on Lincoln police officers. They typically operate with a fair amount of discretion, I think good sense, and I would expect them to in regard to this ordinance as well. One thing the mayor did request of our office when we proposed this, brought this forward, was contact the Lincoln Police Department, make sure they're okay with this. And we did, and they said, yes, it makes sense to us. We would like to have this tool because we receive complaints and there's a limit to what we can do. Now we would at least have a tool and a reason to go out and contact people, and if necessary, have the ability to write tickets. Secondly, I would agree that this is likely to change in the future and become much more complicated. I would tell you that this ordinance is much simpler than what the city of Chicago just passed. Frankly, is somewhat simpler than the draft that Bill Austin presented to me. And I would think there are some benefits to the police officers in the city of Lincoln to keep it simple, to make it more understandable for the citizens of Lincoln, and make sure we're not regulating anything more than what we need to.
All right, questions for Jeff?
Yeah.
Carl.
Jeff, I don't know, this is such, it's a new expanding area. There was an article in the paper this morning. I'm just wondering if there might be people who would have more input for us. This is an ordinance, so we aren't voting today. Could we extend open or hearing for next week, and in case somebody else shows up?
Well, I think certainly there was an article in the newspaper this morning. People might have read that and said, I'd like to testify on this, but couldn't get off work to be here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I think that would make sense to extend the hearing and leave it on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
That's good with me.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
That we need a motion to do that?
We could do it in the voting session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we won't vote on this in the voting session, so probably now. is the
Oh,
time
yeah,
to
that's
say
right,
we'll
yeah.
Continue public hearing and third reading next week. I'd make that, or Carl, if you want to make.
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
I'd second it.
Seconded by Roy. Discussion. All right, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. And that was continued public hearing with third reading.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. That concludes our public hearing. We can move into the voting session now. Public hearing resolutions. Item 23 is the report of claims for the period of March 16th through the 31st, 2016, introduced by Lamb.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 24 is the resolution to prevent tobacco consumption or simulated activities at or within 15 feet of a bus stop, bus shelter, or perimeter line of any transit center or facility, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane.
We
Discussion.
want to amend this to remove, you have the line right there, to remove the word banned from line 11 and substitute the word suspended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Cindy.
Very good.
Discussion on the motion to amend.
Explain. You want to explain it?
Sure. I think the issue there is banned is a much stronger word that might imply a greater length of time. Suspended is less harsh and leaves much more discretion, I think, in terms of interpretation.
All right, any further discussion?
Yeah, thanks. I agree. What I'm thinking about is that individual who just is going to smoke, just because they think they can smoke and they want to smoke and they're addicted to it, whatever. But I guess you could be suspended and suspended and suspended and suspended. So, I mean, you could just keep doing that, I guess. And the idea.
A suspension doesn't necessarily say it has to be for a short period of time. It can be suspended for a year. But banned, it doesn't sound like 2 weeks.
I agree. Yeah.
I'll use an analogy. Pete Rose is banned.
Yes.
Some players may have been suspended, but Pete Rose is banned. That's a bad analogy.
Good try.
Yeah, thanks. All right, any further discussion on the amendment? All right, call the roll on the amendment.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
All right, and on the main motion?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, John.
I was listening to a couple of the testifiers today, and Ms. Sifkin, for example, talking about overkill, and Mr. Schmeling. And, to me, there ought to be, just be good to thy neighbor, a golden rule out there. And so I kind of backed up in thinking I want to support this. And I know it came up kind of quickly in our discussions, and I wonder if, I'd almost prefer if we do a 6-month or something, have Mr. Davis come back and report to us, if we just did a volunteer thing, put signs up in the shelters, if that might have the effect, because I'm not sure, it really, even with this measure, is that. And Mr. Christensen, you followed up after our hearing when we kind of threw this out. I don't know if any of my colleagues, if that registers with them, to perhaps put this on pending or defer it for 6 months.
Cindy?
Thank you. So, as we went through the StarTran, one of the big changes is designated bus stops. And my reason for supporting the resolution is because prior to designated bus stops, you could stand a block away if you see someone smoking. But under our designated bus stops, we're asking people to go to a certain bus stop. There may be several blocks before another one. And so we got great response from citizens who ride the bus, and I've heard great things about people wanting to not have smoking near the bus stops, certainly in the shelters and so forth. I don't know if it'll be problematic. I guess after October, once we start, it may be more pronounced because we'll have the designated bus stops. But I think it's a good resolution, and it meets the needs of some people.
Jane?
I too am going to support this resolution. I don't know if anybody's been to Gold's Galleria and just have been waiting at that bus stop, designated bus stop and transfer station for most of the buses. People smoke there, and it's not inviting. And we want more people to ride StarTran. And I have to tell you that it's really bad for people who have asthma to be subjected to that. And to get them to smoke 15 feet away from the main transfer station would be fantastic.
All right, other comments? Roy, anything? All right, we'll call the roll on the main motion.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 25, ordering construction of sidewalks along the west side of 48th Street from Holdridge to Layton, introduced by Lamb.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Cindy?
Yes, I'd like to hear a little more about Councilman Camp's concerns about this. This is my district, and as I understand this particular resolution, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be authorizing the city to require that UNL build a sidewalk, and if they don't, in that area, and if they don't do that within 45 days or so, that the city would have to come back, Public Works would have to come back, and ask us if we want to build it, and then talk about the parameters of what we're building. But as I understood it, if the UNL wants to go in and negotiate with the city to build a trail, if you will, that they would be free to do that. We just can't make them build a trail. What I do know is that this is extremely well-traveled piece of land from Layton to Holdridge, and I would expect that to continue to increase. So I have seen it when it rains, and it's just a mess over there. So I understand the urgency for it. So I just wanted to maybe hear a little more about your thoughts in delaying it and why that would be.
Well, I would respond that in the hearing there, and looking at it with the line of trees, you've got now removal of trees, you've got a fairly short or narrow right-of-way, and I just wonder if we shouldn't engage a little bit more conversation before we order it to be done.
Roy?
I'd really like to know whether it's going to be a trail or a sidewalk. There's a huge difference in our future costs. And so if they're going to make a trail out of it, I'd like them just to be able to say so right up front, because that might change my vote. So I want to put this on pending until we get some better answers.
Do you want to make that motion?
I will move that we put this on pending.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion on the indefinite pending?
I'd give it a month. So when does that come up on the calendar?
Mid-May.
May 16th?
May 16th.
Jane?
Well, Roy, I guess the reason for doing so is you're hoping that the university will dialogue with the planning department and really come to some type of direction. Is that the reason?
I want to see exactly what it's going to be. If it's going to be a sidewalk, I think I could be in favor of that, because then the shoveling and stuff like that's on the university. But if it's a trail, then we have added ongoing personnel costs, labor costs involved, and I might not be so in favor of that. I'm not sure yet, but I don't even know what this is yet. So I want to know what it is before I vote on it.
John, then Carl.
Yeah, the trees kind of concern me. Now, I know this is more of a thoroughfare, so probably has more traffic, but there are a lot of areas in the country club area and so forth, they do not have sidewalks because of trees. And I know for years and years, when Jonathan Cook was a member, he kept fighting against putting sidewalks in, just saying the people can walk on the street, we don't want to lose those big pin oaks and everything. And so there may be people out there too that say, gosh, we don't want to lose these trees along 48th. And perhaps with some dialogue, the university might come back and say, well, you know, we see that our fence is in farther. Perhaps there's some easement type arrangement where it's built so the trees stay. It's even back from 48th, because you're right, you're looking right along 48th. And I'm not sure how safe that is walking right along 48th either. And so I think maybe like Mr. Christensen just said, get a little bit more definition of what we're talking about might be helpful.
Carl and Cindy?
Thank you. I guess I would support a short delay. I think this is an important project, and as has been proposed to us, a sidewalk, what we're doing here is ordering the paving of the sidewalk, and at a cost to the city of $10,000, $70,000 to the university. If we were to look at a trail, that would be on us completely. So, in addition to the snow removal and other issues there, so I hope we could find a way to get this done, because I do think it is important. We've got a proposal coming up very soon before us for a project directly across the street from where this is located that will significantly impact this area too.
Any further discussion on the delay? Cindy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if Thomas Schaefer could come up.
Thomas Schaefer appearing as requested.
Thank you. Okay, so this resolution would be us telling the university to build a sidewalk.
Yeah. So that might
Yes.
Correct, okay. So without this, if we do a delay, can there be a conversation with the university that you'll feel confident coming back with whether they're going to build the sidewalk or whether they're wanting to build a trail? I mean, I know we can't force discussions because we're not ordering them to do anything, right?
If you're putting on delay, then that's correct. You're not ordering to do anything.
Okay, but do you feel confident that you can have the conversations that we're talking about?
I'm sure we can have a conversation. I'm sure they'll be forthright with what they desire or don't desire.
Okay, and then you can report that to us if we delay something for a month.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Carl and then John.
thank you.
Don't go away. And when you spoke earlier, you indicated something about the earliest this could be done was 2019. Was that the Dead Man Run?
That was the Dead Man Run, and if there was going to be any modification to that bridge on 48th over Dead Man's Run,
Okay.
that's what I would predict would be the earliest that bridge
That part.
modification would occur.
But the sidewalk could be
Sidewalk
done.
could,
Okay,
I would
anytime.
think, occur
Okay.
sooner than that if it were to go forward.
Thank you.
But there's a lot of issues to work out.
John?
Yeah, you know, with this redevelopment agreement coming before us, it's going to have tax increment financing for the other side. That might be something too, that some of the TIF funds could be used to help in this event, to help everyone in a win-win situation. I know that's probably been heavily negotiated, but nonetheless, we haven't approved it. And so if again, looking at that 48th Street corridor, that's a public improvement that could be very justifiable. So, sounds like, again, I just think there's a good reason to at least do the 1 month.
Thank you.
All right, we'll vote on the 1 month delay.
To the 16th of May.
Till the 16th of May. Call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge? Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Ordinances, public hearing, ordinances second reading are items 26 and 27. Ordinances third reading, item 28, annexation 16002, annexing approximately 89.59 acres and adjacent right-of-way located at North 89th and Fremont Street, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. All right, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 29. Change of zone 05054D to amend the Prairie Village North Planned Unit Development at North 89th and Fremont Street, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 30, change of zone 16002 for a change from H3 Highway Commercial to I-1 Industrial at Southwest 32nd and West O Street, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Carl. Discussion. Carl.
Yes, in our hearing last week, we heard about where this area is. If you were to drive to it, you stop just before you get to the Lancaster County Jail, and it's just off there in a nice industrial park, all industrial uses in that area. It's appropriate location.
All right. Further discussion? All right, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 31, text amendment 16005, amending section 26.27.005 of the LMC relating to minimum required improvements within a final plat to provide that the city may encourage and promote the installation of new minimum required improvements not required in a previously approved final plat by agreeing to subsidize the increased cost of the new minimum required improvement in accordance with specific criteria adopted by resolution of the City Council, and repealing section 26.27.005 as hitherto existing, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. John.
I just, that general description didn't really cover some of the specifics. Basically, this is just applying to LED streetlights. And that secondly, we were told in the public hearing that with platted areas that have already been approved, that it's estimated the city to subsidize the difference between an high-pressure sodium that to an LED would be approximately a total of $15,000. So that's what we're doing. It's not saying that all future minimum requirements would change. And it also doesn't address anything about retrofitting existing streetlights, and that's something that I've mentioned to Public Works I'd like to visit about in the future.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 32, text amendment 16003, amending the City of Lincoln design standards to add chapter 3.100, design standards for outdoor lighting, providing design standards for the installation of outdoor luminaries, revising section 3, definition of lumen, luminaire, and mounting height, amending subsections 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, and 6.7, repealing sections 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, and 12 of chapter 3.100 as hitherto existing, and to provide that the city may require LED post-top fixtures in existing final plats, provided the city pays for the increased cost over the approved HSPV post-top fixture, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
And Lamb.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 33, change of zone, 16005, for a change from H2 Highway Business to B5 Planned Regional, and the city's request for a change from R2 Residential to P Public at 225 North Cotner Boulevard and 300 North 56th Street, respectively. Introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 34, pre-existing use permit 3AG, application to amend the boundary of the Gateway Mall use permit at 225 North Cotner Boulevard, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Cindy.
I just want to say I want to acknowledge the concerns that neighbors that live a couple blocks over had about the traffic, and I think that this The plan development calls for smaller residences, which will, I believe, bring fewer cars into that area. And I know that area does get pretty much traffic at certain times of the day. But the more by providing housing to people who work in the area and converting that to more of a pedestrian type area, I think it will be fine. And I just want to recognize there are a lot of people that live in that area already that don't contribute to the traffic. It's kind of a common area where people do some walking locally, and that we certainly have built up on O Street for the for restaurants and groceries and so forth. So I'm going to support this.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. And finally, item 35, approving a real estate purchase agreement between the city and Paul Versaw for the sale of city-owned property at 1732 North 28th Street, introduced by Gaylor Baird.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Jane. Discussion. Okay, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Resolutions on first reading, just one item, number 36. Ordinances first reading, items 37 through 39. Anyone wishing to address the council on a matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone day.
Keep me awake. Oof. Terry Pope Gonzalez, I didn't bring no panties. Listen. Do I have to sign all this? Can I do that after I'm done? Because I got all these people coming to me now. Terry Pope Gonzalez brought my filter. Look, you know the deal about the filter? Do you know what this is? Because you guys sent the police to my house to tell me that I have to have a filter when I come in here. And actually, this is the United States of America. We have protected freedom of speech. So I'm not gonna get after Jeff. He was my attorney, so Jeff is really a smart man because I am not stupid. I would not hire an idiot, okay? So, let's see. Did you know that you guys had an Esquire club? So you guys were pervs. You just, sorry. You guys, I met one of your bunnies, okay? You guys really had an Esquire club. Did you know that? She showed me pictures and everything. Anyway, she gave me this to say this because she wants me not to be harsh. I'm supposed to be less harsh, so thank you for that. And thank you for the who makes the most money, Tom Cassidy. He needs to not let his police go a year without a contract. But here's what this says, and I can't read with the glasses or without the glasses. There is so much good in the worst of us, and so much bad in the best of us, that it ill behooves any of us to find fault with the rest of us. Okay, so I don't talk like that, do I? So, but anyway, this lady's name is, I don't know, Jinnohn. And the last name is Troeger. John is what they call her. She is 87 years old. How I found her, she was walking in the snow on 48th, okay, in a snowstorm. I was up at Dollar Tree. One of the managers came over and said, Mama T, this lady's walking. I said, I got it. So I went over to her, and I had a cart full of candy for the kids in my neighborhood. And this little old lady, she said, are you going to eat all that? I didn't realize I was looking that bad. So I said, no. And anyway, you could tell she was hungry, okay? And I said, do you want some? And she goes, to your store. Now, you can tell I don't go to your store, okay? I don't like to bag my own groceries because, see, they hurry you out. So I go to Schmick's Market, which used to be Bonanza, okay? And then it was Sunmart. But anyway, as we're doing this, so now I've got all these people coming to me. So let's do, because the demonstration really works, okay? How you can tell about people's lives. Now, what are these? These are attorney cards. So now if my brothers had to be here, you guys think I'm something. Wait till they show up. Okay, how come this woman has so many attorneys? Now, do we know who this is? This is Stephanie Hupp, McHenry, Hazard, Hanson, Roth, and Hupp. 402-476-2200, extension 15, right? Okay. Now let's see, we have Brennan. And we have, okay, here we go. We have Sean Brennan. And see what happens in my world? Okay, you start giving them a gold standard if they've earned it, okay? Then we have Sean Brennan again. Then we have Matthew K. Kaminsky, Sean Brennan, Matthew Kaminsky, Dave Kiker, okay? You guys did a whole bunch of stuff you shouldn't have done. So my house was gonna be a trustee sale today. So see, I couldn't call brothers because in Denver, Colorado, marijuana's legal, isn't it? I don't have a problem snapping my finger getting some money here. I didn't want any drug money connected to my house. Because see, in Lincoln, Nebraska, you can't smoke marijuana. Now look at me. I don't smoke. I haven't smoked since Leonard Skinner, 1976. And I understand you weren't born then, okay? My son was born 1977. Okay, so we did smoke a little doobie back then. Reason I don't, because Leonard Skinner concert, guess what? Front row seats, guess where I am? Asleep against the speakers. So I don't need to smoke dope, do I? So I missed that whole concert, and they're dead, right? They were dead 6 weeks later, so that's not my drug. So, and I don't drink either. Reason I don't drink, can you imagine me drinking? That'd be crazy. So anyway, all right. So out of all these attorneys here, okay, ones that I know, if I was in trouble, would I call them? No, because you never know who you're gonna get. So who would I call? I would call this person. You know why? This person's my nephew, okay? This person, I'm his godmother. And in a Latin community, they know if the madrina calls, you drop whatever you're doing and you get over there. So this person, now you guys don't know who this person is. Even if he was sitting here, you wouldn't know unless I let you know, right? So they're from Peru. Now, I do like your libraries because I take the little kids down from the library. In my neighborhood, the little kids do not have the iPhones. The little kids get the monkeys that I give them. So what you guys did when you voted wrong, okay, you took that park away from those little kids. That group is still not doing what they're supposed to. I have a whole list for you, but I'm not going to dog you because I've been hammering on you, so I'm going to be nice to you. I'm going to say thank you to you. Cindy, you got those people's flood thing. See, we're still waiting for the police department to come take reports from when that concrete company was shoving the sewage into our houses. That was May last year. We're still waiting. I'm done.
Thank you very much.
That was nice, huh? What's this with the coats? Why is it so cold in here?
Anyone else wishing to speak this evening?
Mr. Chair, seeing nobody coming forward, I'd move for adjournment.
Second.
All right, call the roll, please.
Raybold?
Yes.
Camp?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
Eskridge?
Yes.
Fellers?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
We're adjourned.
Would you tell me about your store?